to the show, everyone. Still sloshing around in early career Harrison Ford, slowly making it to Ford's big hits one movie at a time. It's a journey here on The Ford Fiesta. I'm Hokey religion skeptic Adam Witt.
And I'm Paul of the Wild, Preston. And if you're new to the show, don't worry, the show's new too.
That's right. We have 50-some episodes of this show, because, well, we're going to watch Harrison Ford movies anyway, might as well report on it. Today's movie of choice continues Ford's Western phase, which stops after this and only picks up again if Gene Wilder and aliens are involved. Journey to Shiloh. And since we're new, please help us spread the word on the show by commenting on articles, videos, and more. Subscribe where you can, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, and more. And then get ready for everything coming up on the show and all things we're up to on The Movie Guys by visiting themovieguys.net or follow us at The Movie Guys all over social media.
You gotta get you some of that.
It's here that we ask you to pretend not to know what Journey to Shiloh is about so we can give you our patented recap of the movie. But coming up first... what's new in the world of Harrison Ford?
Well, it's sort of a lateral Harrison Ford story. They're making a series out of the Mosquito Coast.
Get the hell out of here.
It's coming to Apple TV April 30th. And Ford isn't doing it, but they do have Justin Theroux as the main character. Oh, God, his name escapes me now. But that will continue, I guess, either tell this story or tell more of the story or an elongated version of the story. It looks like action-packed. Like maybe they even missed an opportunity to get Harrison Ford more action-y in that movie back in the day. But Mosquito Coast, is it forgotten? I don't know. It's kind of like a sideline Harrison Ford adventure, but now we'll take the front and center as a story now with Justin Theroux.
Well, so this is one of the movies I'm most excited to get back to for Harrison Ford, because I haven't seen this movie since the theater. You probably haven't either. It's not, if you're a Harrison Ford fan, you just don't pop on Mosquito Coast in the afternoon to just, to have that on for the feels. But it's such a curiosity. It's one of the movies he's most proud of, and it's a fascinating little story of this guy that takes his whole family out. I could see this absolutely being a series.
And absolutely being relevant again. A man sort of retreating from society that's gotten too out of hand. It's gotten too evil or negative, and he needs to protect his family, because that's certainly a case you could make today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And Theroux's got this cred now with something like The Leftovers, where he can come in and do another essentially cable show, Apple TV Plus, and maybe make it ring. So we'll see.
Oh, I love Justin Theroux. I love his style. I've loved him ever since I first saw him in Mulholland Drive. And then right after that, he wrote Iron Man 2. Not right after. Iron Man 2. Yeah, he wrote Iron Man 2 and then the same year wrote Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
And
people may forget that about him, but he's a double threat at least.
Yeah.
We'll see if he sings and dances. And then, as we've purported, Ford will be making Indiana Jones 5, and we talk about it every week pretty much, how we're excited about it. But now someone talked to Sean Patrick Flannery, if you remember, played Indiana Jones in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and he said he'd love to appear. He said this.
Oh my God.
He said, Man, I can probably count on one hand the amount of people that wouldn't want to do something that George Lucas originated. Being in a Harrison Ford film, I mean, that falls into the same Dexter category, meaning that he eventually appeared on Dexter, and people said, if they bring back Dexter, would you want to be on it? He's like, hell yeah. But having said that, I mean, to me, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? They've got my $20 at the theater every time they put one of those out. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Hey, I guess, yeah, I mean, we already had, it's kind of which was first, River Phoenix or Sean Patrick Flannery as young Indiana Jones?
River Phoenix.
River Phoenix, yeah. So so I guess Sean Patrick Flannery filled in where, of course, River Phoenix passed, so he couldn't do it. So now, I mean, he wouldn't be young Indiana Jones anymore. He'd be like adult, but not old Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I wonder what
Which is an awkward title for a television show. And Indiana Jones 5 is scheduled for July 29th, 2022, if COVID doesn't kill the production schedule. But they should be on it here. Gotta be. They gotta be on it the middle of this year if they're going to do anything, you know?
And the Ford Fiesta will be there to report on all of this. We're going to keep this going until Indiana Jones 5, for sure. No matter how many topics we have to vamp, just to keep going until we get to Indiana Jones 5, and then we have a gigantic Ford Fiesta for that movie.
Let's go back and cover those TV shows just to keep it going, because it's only March or something. It doesn't know.
Where's this episode of Bonanza?
And as ever, we Google Harrison Ford news just to see what comes up. And here's something. InsideHook.com said, why you need a Western-style belt like Harrison Ford. Turns out it livens up your underwhelming shirt and jeans. It's simple, authentic, and easy, especially when Ford pairs it with blazers and polos, making disparate styles into one cohesive outfit.
That is correct.
I guess there's nothing else to report on.
Good research, Paul. I love that there's nothing to report on, but also websites have got to write an article no matter what. And Harrison Ford being the most famous, our favorite star of all time, everybody's favorite star of all time. It's like, let's rope him into whatever topic I need to write on today.
So someone saw that he's got a belt on that kind of has an authentic Western buckle and loop to it. And they said, oh, this picture from the 70s looks similar. This one from the 80s looks similar. It's his style. Article. We have article.
Right. I love it.
We have content. And other big news, of course, and this also was a learning experience for me. Crackle has released its programming for March.
Crackle's still around. Still a thing.
It's still around. And on the streamer's War channel, Hanover Street will be available to viewers to watch. And we'll be talking about it in like 4 or 5 weeks, I guess.
Oh my God. So we'll get to watch that on Crackle.
Convenient.
Yes. And I wasn't aware that Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment now owns Crackle. So Crackle is now all sort of feel-good entertainment. You're not going to find, Blue Velvet on there.
Deadpool.
but you'll find Hanover Street because it's a rah-rah war romance, type of movie.
Secretly, none of us think of the behemoth that is Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Didn't know they were into production. Yeah. One more quick reoccurring show segment before we get to the recap. This date in Ford history. February 26, 2009, Crossing Over is released, and if you don't know what that is, you're our kind of audience member. And Adam, you're that kind of audience member, right? Do you know Crossing Over?
I've never heard of Crossing Over.
I was a member of the, and would still be today if they had, theaters, the SAG Film Society, and they included it in their programming that year, so it was free tickets to take somebody and go check it out. So I did, and it's a pretty decent movie. It's a drama about Crossing Over refers to the border, so Ford's a border cop in that one, and they have stories about the families, they have a story about the law enforcement. It's just kind of all these intertwined stories about the border and how tumultuous it is, and it's not bad. Well, we'll have fun getting to that one. I think there's some real good scenes in it, even though it's kind of uneven on the whole. Yeah.
So it's like a traffic. It's like various vignettes that take place like that are surround the border. Yeah,
and ironically, of course, he turned down Traffic, if you remember, and Michael Douglas took that role in Traffic. So later on, he's like, "Oh, a border movie," and he comes on board for this one, which of course didn't win Oscars, but he got to be in this type of movie eventually, anyway.
You've mentioned that before. Maybe it is mostly the Traffic is the big example of it because I think that's more widely known that he turned that down. But you've mentioned other movies that he sort of made as a makeup for one that he turned down.
I don't know if he turned down Crimson Tide, but now we have K-19, The Widowmaker.
Right. He might have turned down Crimson Tide.
Maybe. March 5th, 1979, The Empire Strikes Back begins filming. They wasted no time, just a couple years after... they all knew Empire was coming, so... couple years after Star Wars, they start making Empire.
Together again, huh?
I do remember a story from the making of book where it was so snowed in. They got all the cast and crew and everything there, and they were just completely snowed in to the hotel. So those shots of Luke after he leaves the Wampa, who's kind of going over the hill and he falls and rolls, it was too cold to shoot because the film would get brittle. It was so cold. You had to have heaters on that stuff. So they just set up the camera in the back lobby of the hotel with it warm inside and opened the window and shot, and they just sent Mark Hamill up to the ridge to roll down and do that shot, and that was the first shot, I believe, of Empire Strikes Back.
Wow.
Yeah, shot from the hotel. Every time I see that shot, I think of that. I'm like, they're just sitting in the hotel shooting him. All right, run out and do a shot for the biggest movie of all time.
Yeah, every time you hear that about like the what was the Clooney one that just came out, The Midnight Sky, and The Revenant, it's like the things they go through to get these shots. I mean, it's crazy. And of course, in March 5th, 2015, one of Adam's favorite things, Harrison Ford crashes his plane, landing at a Penmar golf course in Venice.
Wow.
And walks away like a champ.
Walks away. He really flies. He's really good at flying. He really walks away from big accidents with airplanes. It's the most Harrison Ford thing that ever happened. That in Star Wars.
Imagine you just there with your pals, like, just golfing, and then poof, somebody call an ambulance. Like, what? Oh my God.
And you see this giant, I love that he's flying a classic World War era II PT-22 airplane also. I mean, how cool is this guy? Harrison Ford is as Harrison Ford as you could possibly get.
Get off my plane.
But, Paul, that's not what we're here to talk about. We are not here to journey to a golf course in Venice. We are not here to journey to Oslo, Norway. We are not journeying to the border of Mexico. Paul, what are we here to journey to?
Well, we actually are journeying to the border of Mexico, but we're here for Journey to Shiloh.
So what the hell is Journey to Shiloh? If you want to know, you can watch it on YouTube, streaming in extremely low resolution. But also, we're going to tell you with our Movie Guys recap. Let's do it.
In Journey to Shia LaBeouf, 7 young Texans in the Confederate Army during the American Civil War, the Concho County Comanches, journey to Shiloh, Virginia, where a major battle is about to take place. Along the way, they encounter many perilous adventures. The end! That's all that Wikipedia really has down as the plot, so tune in to the low-res perilous adventures on YouTube.
Come on, Paul, we're better than that. We're journalists, first and foremost. Then, of course, phlebotomists, and, if time remaining, Maricopa County, Arizona jail wardens. But as journalists, we did our due diligence and watched this movie. And here's what happened. There were 7 boys from Texas. They rode off to fight a war. 1,000 miles to Richmond was where they headed for. They were wild and bold and reckless, sons of the far frontier. Their lips had known no women, and their hearts had known no fear.
But as John Lennon said, characters are what happens while movies are making other plans. So who were the over-enumerated 7? Well, there was Buck Burnett.
Buck Burnett was their leader.
Buck Burnett was their leader, the captain of this crew. The Indians made him orphan at the age of 2.
Miller Knowles, Buck's saddle buddy, as steady as the sun. He followed every order. He was the loyal one.
Toto McLean was the quiet one, a man that you could trust. His blood of Texas water, his flesh of Texas dust.
U.B. Bell was the gesture. Making laughter was his aim. The war, the way he heard it, was just another game.
But that's not really who Journey to Shiloh's about. If you've come here to hear about Harrison Ford, then you know that Journey to Shiloh is really about one cowboy in particular, Willie Bill. Now, Willie Bill was born in Pecos. 18 summers he has seen. He's old enough to soldier, but will he see 19? No.
The young Texans set out to join General Hood's regiment in Richmond, Virginia. So that's Texas to Virginia on horses who definitely did not sign up for the shit. But it's not the destination that matters. What really matters is the bar fights, gambling, and prostitutes they met along the way.
And the anti-war and human rights messages they meet along the way as well, because like any good 1968 Civil War movie, Journey to Shiloh is about Vietnam and civil rights, as the kids discover that they've spent the first 18 to 20 years of their lives in 1860s Texas, but somehow didn't know it was racist, and they meet slaves for the first time. some of whom are perfectly happy with the job of forced labor at the end of a whip.
Quicker than they can scrub up in the crick over yonder, they find themselves at a fancy Texas cotillion of whiteness, where the boys find that the South they're fighting for is perfectly happy to have poor Hicks fight the war to ensure the continuation of wealth, but wouldn't stoop to spit on them when they come face to face. But enough about all the wars that have ever occurred ever.
The Pacifism Express starts its inevitable roll downhill as Buck sees the brutality of man gun down J.C., the first of many Concho County Comanches to meet their end on this journey, shot in a bar over a matter of $50 when J.C. Sutton's fastest gun had met a faster one.
And J.C. Sutton's fastest gun had met a faster one.
But the great allegory backpack that is the Western is just getting started robbing these kids of their innocence, as doubt is cast in the glory of the Southern cause for the war, the continuation of slavery, when the Comanches turn a runaway slave into the authorities. The assumption that the slave would be returned to his life of luxury yachts and golf vacations is punctured when they later find him hung like a slave in the 1800s. These kids are idiots. What can we say? They were educated in the Texas school system.
Road trip. Texarkana continues with more vignettes of the lovable goofs' adventures on the way to war, including a night out at a belly dancing bar where they are again harassed by the locals who call them longhairs, echoing a popular 1968 hippie epithet. When the reputations of the dancers are besmirched by Confederate soldiers, the kids stand up for the women's rights the only way they know how, with a bar fight.
Not only does Buck's face take a big hit, but so does his desire to give his life for the country when he meets a reason to live in the love of Gabrielle, the dancer with the heart of gold, who's finally met a man of high moral character. He'll come back for her, unless the war's super great when he gets there.
In a tale as old as time, Buck makes time with a lady while his brothers sleep on the floor of a jail cell. Man's got to have his priorities. Gabrielle sends Buck on his way with the traditional 6-hour anniversary gift, oranges and garters.
With a lifetime of experiences gathered in a week, the boys reach Pensacola where they finally sign up to be Confederate soldiers and meet Braxton Bragg, with a voice as epic as his name. Bragg has left his life as a sandpaper taste tester to lead the Southern troops in a march to their deaths. Shiloh, Virginia, as the Concho County Comanches realize they're not even fighting for Texas, but fighting in the mud and rain for some Virginia bullshit.
After a clip from Walt Disney's Technicolor World of War, one by one the brothers succumb to bullets, consumption, and bullets as the war takes its toll. It would not be the last time that Jan Michael Vincent would die, but a first for the rest of the cast, each of the Comanches getting a 10-minute death scene. Except Harrison Ford, who dies off-screen. After delivering a new Ford record, 4 lines in this movie, I was hoping to see him get to act for the first time in his career, but...
How do they all die? Well,
Miller
Knowles, he died a bleedin' from a bounty hunter's gun. And Toto went to glory beneath a blood-red sun. Yubi's laughter nevermore is heard. A mortar killed him dead. And Willie fell a-runnin', a bullet in his head. Off screen!
All right, that is Journey to Shiloh. In case you didn't know what it was, now you do. We didn't know what it was, so we saw the movie. So I don't know who's better off, us or you. Regardless, it was made in 1968, so let's do a quick run of the numbers on that. That's appearances in 4 movies in 2 years for Harrison Ford.
Right.
Plus 3 TV shows. He was on The Virginian, Ironside, and The Mod Squad at the same time. By the way, I would love to see Harrison Ford on Mod Squad.
Yeah.
We got to seek that out, even though we're not the TV guys. We got to look for that.
Maybe a Patreon episode if we ever get that set up. But that would be a great one to do. Yeah. Oh, my God. Harrison Ford TV appearances. I mean, Mod Squad. Right.
What was always the knock on the studio system? You know, because to me, it just seems great. They hire you, and then you're just in everything all the time. Like, how great is that?
It is kind of cool, because they're cranking out. This is another sort of cranked out feeling-ish movie, although we found out from last week that appearances can be deceiving, because that was apparently this lush spectacle movie that didn't come through. But, they crank this out, and then they slam all these actors in it. So this is Universal now. So Harrison Ford must be under a new contract.
Correct. That's right. The
because it was Columbia for 3 movies, and they just started slot him in. You're the hippie in the car. You're the guy that says fire in Time to Kill.
Maybe they looked at his part in his one line in those 2 movies and said, well, I think he's destined for bigger things. Somebody saw the potential.
Nobody's seeing the potential so far. That's one thing about this movie is like, you've got a big Magnificent Seven style cast. You know, you got a big gang of people, and when you're picking your big gang of people for a Magnificent Seven or a Dirty Dozen, you know, you think of those 2 casts, like you just slam some icons in there, and there's 2 icons in this gang. Well, 3, Jan Michael Vincent, I guess.
And there's you've hit us almost on the tagline, which according to IMDb says, "The Unstoppable Seven. They came to fight in tattered buckskins and left in blazing glory."
Oh my God, that's
Unstoppable
fantastic.
7. You're right. It's like, ooh, that was a hit. How can we get in on that?
Yeah, but as the movie goes on, you're like, well, first of all, of course, Harrison Ford has more lines than he's had in any movie we've watched.
True.
Willie Bill, how far you reckon we made today?
35, 40 miles.
Did you find it more exciting because we could look for Harrison Ford in every frame in this one?
He just kept not dying. So that was exciting. I'm like, well, he's got to be done here because he's a support. Nope, still going. I was like, okay.
At the end, they have all these death scenes. Everybody gets a death scene. Everybody gets one. And the full on, I see the light. I'm seeing the light. Oh my God, tell my girl that I love her. Like everybody gets that full on 10 minutes of a last gasp Shakespeare play death. And after about 2 or 3 of those, I was like, are we going to get a Harrison Ford death scene? I mean, talk about a first. And immediately in my head, because I'm like, we are 4 movies into this fest, and no, he's going to die off screen. I called it, and sure enough, there's like, after 3 long death scenes, someone comes up and goes, oh yeah, and Willie Bill also died. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, it took a bullet in the face, and then he's done. I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, and they really just brought in Ford, it seems like, for... the movie needed a no-nonsense element, right? You had all the guys like, yeah, we're signing up for the army. Yeah, we are. And we're going to sign up for the Confederates. We're going to fight the Unions. That's right. And we're going to come from Texas. We're going to show everybody what Texas is all about. And in the background, Harrison's just always with a line or two like, who are these guys?
Somebody coming.
Like, if it had to turn from, hey, we're having fun out here, it would always be him who kind of comes in with...
He's gonna be mean when he wakes up, Buck.
The rest of them all have major malfunctions, you know. There's the guy that's clearly the loose cannon. Oh, the loose cannon announces himself so quickly. That's JC, right? I don't need your rules.
Yes.
I'll go over there. I'm going to go gamble. Oh, he's going to lose all his money. I'm going to go hang out with the prostitutes. Oh, they're going to steal all his money. Like,
you know who all these characters are because there is a glorious opening song.
Oh my
that lays out who everybody is. Not even cleverly. It's just like, here's the IMDb page. And like, it just describes everybody. So you know what's going on. And I guess thanks. I guess that helps.
Oh, the song. It names each one of them off, what their deal is, how cool each one of them is. He's the guy that doesn't talk much. I'm doing it in the Blazing Saddles.
Well, but here's what you should be mimicking, because this is what somebody must have done over at Universal and said, guys, I just noticed Yellow Rose of Texas is royalty free.
Yes!
What? So they went and they got the Yellow Rose of Texas, added their own lyrics to describe all the characters, and they have a hit on their hands.
They have a hit with me. I mean, I just started smiling so much. And, I mean, can you imagine how many movies would be great if they opened up with this complete song and a montage of the characters? Imagine the Godfather family, you know? It's like,
Michael, he was the youngest, and it's great.
There's Fredo, the dumb one. He'll betray us all. Oh my God. Yeah, it'd be so great. It made me so happy. Now, however, I do have to say, like, what is this movie in a way? Because it's shot, once again, like a Brady Bunch episode, right? From the cinematographer of, Bonanza, as opposed to the cinematographer of Once Upon a Time in the West, you know?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, you have a director, William Hale, who's mostly a TV guy. Now a TV guy is Alan Taylor, and he can make a Terminator movie, or like the Russos, I think, and they're making Marvel films.
Yeah.
Now,
very different.
But then a TV guy who directed Kojak, I think, was one of his credits, and he makes a Western that looks like Kojak.
But Richard Donner was one of those guys. He was a Kojak director that ended up doing Superman.
Oh, that's true. So I guess it can happen. You could call this movie, outside of Journey to Shiloh, like Wandering.
Right.
The movie.
Right. It's a road trip movie.
yeah, they go from here to there, and then there seems to be a goal, but along the way, it's whatever the hell they run into. This town, that town, this girl, this bunch, these soldiers. So it's Mosian, the movie.
Mosian, yeah, Amblin. Did you feel the freedom of that? I did enjoy that once I sunk into the rhythm of this. I was like, oh, you don't see a lot of Westerns like this. You don't see a lot of movies like this, actually, where it's just, look, we're going to go from here to there, the classic road trip movie, and along the way, all the things that happen, But
I have to also admit, and I don't know if, I can't remember, I think Cold Mountain was trying to get me to do this too. I have trouble caring about scumbag Confederate soldiers.
Right.
I do now, and I do in Charlottesville. Or at the Capitol.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
It's just what I...
Well, but...
It's a rough call.
But much like A Time for Killing, to kill, a Time to Kill for, this is an anti-war movie. And there's a lot of anti-war stuff in it. This is a coming-of-age thing, so they see that the slave gets hung. They see the real brutality of war. And they see all this on their way to join the military. They lose faith in the war, in the journey that they're going. I mean, that's kind of a cool way to tell this story. They're losing their faith, and then by the time they get there, then when the war becomes real, and it ain't even nearly as glamorous as they thought it was going to be. It becomes the real thing, mud and rain and all the platoon stuff.
But it was just amazing how I thought just how naive these young men were. Like, they really hadn't seen any of this.
Right.
They just heard about the North, and like it. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like today. It's like they heard a thing and like, we're all angry now.
Yeah.
Like, wait, did you explore what the deal is? Unfortunately, on the way to the Capitol, people didn't have their reckoning with what's really going on.
Epiphany of what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why am I carrying a flag with an 80s celebrity's name on it?
But another sort of social element to this you could bring up is, we just saw A Time for the Kill to happen, and that was we made a joke about it failed the Bechdel test.
Right.
This fails huge. Like, there's just no women doing anything other than being of service to men and not talking about themselves or anything other than men all the time.
Oh, man.
And there's like 2 women, I think, too, and they both like are all fawning over the guys.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, of course, because he has to meet his lady in the journey on the way. The reason to live in the battle. He meets his lady. They fall in love while the kids are out journeying, and
that's the closest he comes to being passionate, though. James Caan's Buck Burnett is a very passive protagonist. A lot of times he's like, well, what's happening here?
I know.
Well, we're going up to that ridge. I reckon I'd go along with you.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we don't go to the ridge. They said we're going to be aligning ourselves with horrible people. Well, I guess so. And we should, he seemed very, very casual.
Yeah, he's as dispassionate as you would imagine a Buck Burnett would be.
Watch Buck.
But
yes. By the way, love Buck Burnett on SNL.
Yeah, he's a cold fish in this movie. I mean, is this a good performance or a bad performance? I mean,
it's just it's just
performance. There, isn't it? It's really
like the character's just there.
Yeah. He doesn't really carry you along. Like, the premise carries me along, but he certainly doesn't. And it doesn't help that his Magnificent Seven is kind of the Magnificent Three of actors I care about. Even so, watching it, it's like when you're doing a Magnificent Seven, you got a lot of pressure on you. The Magnificent Seven wasn't just Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner. And so many times throughout this movie, I would see these other characters and get a shade of who they should be. Bruce Dern should have been one of them. And Peter Fonda should have been one of those soldiers. Mm-hmm. And then you'd have a really perfect cast for this sort of thing. And
then you have to get Frankenheimer or somebody to direct it, and then you'd have a better movie. Yeah,
well, that's what's upsetting too, is that Harrison Ford is wallpaper in this movie. He has 5 to 6 lines, which is great, and I believe he punches a guy.
There's fights. Yeah, I'm sure he did. We'll have to re-explore that.
I have to examine these bar fights like the Zapruder tape and see exactly how many punches Harrison Ford gets in.
No, we have a tally going. Why did we not write this down?
Well, I swear I saw one Harrison Ford punch, but there's a couple times where Buck looks like Harrison Ford from behind. They only have
many times
slightly different hat.
Especially in the low-res version of the movie we saw.
Right.
It's good to tell what the hell's going on.
But the first thing that happens in this movie is a bar fight, and that's so exhilarating. Like, immediately, as soon as that song is done, and
Dennis Moore, dum 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 the night.
The Concho County Comanches they get right into a bar fight. It's a rip-roaring good time with these kids.
I'm trying to figure out why that fight happened. Why did that fight happen?
Because they were all keyed up and, I don't remember why that happened, but...
I don't recall there being a good reason for it, but not that you need one. But I will tell you this. The shot of them entering that saloon, they kind of get off their horses, and there's a sort of wide shot of them in the lower half of the screen just kind of going into the saloon, is in a montage for the 6 Points, Texas filming area of Universal Studios Hollywood. Every time you see the tour, they show, here's the clips of stuff that was shot here, and you see John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart and Kirk Douglas. And that clip, I'm like, wait a minute, if you're going to show that clip, you got to include Harrison Ford. So here, I never knew I was watching a clip from that movie a lot, because I've been on the Universal tour
wow.
Dozens of times. But there's that, but you have to include, I would go through and re-edit. You got to show them going into the saloon so you get the big shot of the set, but then include just a quick shot of Harrison Ford eating the apple or whatever he's doing, just to show that he was a part of it.
Oh yeah, that's so funny. They put a clip from this movie and didn't showcase Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Like this is a classic
or
movie.
James Caan. They're all from the back, walking into the bar. So, I mean, I guess the set is the star in that shot, but you should have just maybe included.
Yeah.
And speaking of sets, I mean, outside of the Universal Studios, the IMDb says it was filmed in Agora and Thousand Oaks, California. I mean, can that be it?
Yes, because it was on the way to Virginia. They found the path that avoids Monument Valley. Like, oh, it's a shortcut. It avoids Monument Valley. Sure, it looks a little bit like Sherman Oaks.
But they come across a plantation in one scene. I'm like, okay, where the heck is that out in the West Valley? But I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. But that is how how they get in all of the, the coming of age part of this movie, where the kids meet their first runaway slave. They're going to fight in the Confederacy, and to make that journey, they have to come across what the war is actually about, and they meet a slave, and that's the first slave any of them have ever met.
Now, Harrison Ford is 18 in this, according to the song. He's 18, but will he see 19 was the story, I think, was his lyric. He's 25 in real life at the time. Even 18 years, you'd think you'd know what slaves are all about. It's very strange.
I guess until they come face to face with it. But
yeah, I suppose so.
That is the interesting coming of age part of it, the politics that gets in there. And standing up for a woman, and the woman says, nobody's ever stood up for me again. So they get all that in there in the corners. It's kind of makes it a little more worthwhile of a journey.
Yeah, and that brings up Brenda Scott. She was a looker.
Right.
The Gabrielle, the girl in that. And James Gammon, you get a brief James Gammon in there as one of the Confederate soldiers before his voice got all like this as the manager in Major League.
Oh, that guy?
So that guy was there for a split second. He got hit in the head, and when James Caan stole the horse.
I'm going to have to put you on hold. I got a guy on the other line about a pair of white walls.
I saw him on stage in Chicago at Steppenwolf doing a show. I mean, that's his thing. Being like, sounding like this. Yeah, I did that asshole. There's one of them. He was in Silverado talking like that. But another interesting credit, of course, Bud Westmore showed up as the makeup designer. He, of course, is famous for designing the creature from the Black Lagoon. So not much makeup here, but certainly he's up for the task of making people look bloody and dirty and all that other stuff.
Wow.
So that was kind of a high end, I thought. I mean, the Westmore family now, they're just a huge, iconic entity in the world of film and TV makeup. So. And he showed up in this.
Wow.
So there you go.
Well, I noticed, I thought at first the name Noah Beery is a famous character actor.
Noah Beery was Jim Rockford's dad in the Rockford Files. That was his big claim to fame. Although you look at his credits, there's like 200 of them.
But I didn't know who John Doucette was. It was Braxton Bragg, but that voice.
You learn to say yes, sir, and no, sir when addressed by an officer. Is that clear?
It's almost like the Union General at the opening of My Time to Kill, or whatever the last movie was.
Yeah.
He did the same thing when he was barking out orders to kill the...
Yeah, get all these men over here.
You get all these...
All right, men.
So for being around longer in this film than the previous ones, let's look at the Harrison Ford list of essentials.
Okay.
Did Harrison Ford have righteous anger? No. It was more of a silent righteousness.
Yeah.
Does he point? And not that I'm aware of.
No.
Smile or charm? He was only smiling when they gave him money in Vicksburg to go find a hooker.
Somebody coming.
Which makes sense. Does he shout or growl? Not really. Just always. Again, these are all very sensitive, low-key guys. Well, not all of them, but
he's the lowest
the guys.
He's the lowest.
Absolutely, they cast him well in that respect.
Yeah.
And does he hit a guy? And does he get hit? Well, we got to do the stats on that.
We're gonna have to
before this episode is over. We'll have those. So then, how Harrison Ford is he in this?
Can we answer which Harrison Ford is he first? Because did you have thoughts?
That always leads to the percentage.
Oh, okay,
So
okay. How?
Who does he remind you of elsewhere in his career? Often leads to coming up with a percentage.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, it's regarding Henry.
Really?
Yeah, post-bullet.
So,
Soft-spoken, a little slower of the brothers.
shoot a guy in the head, and he immediately acts like he's from Texas. That's what you're saying.
Just that sort of innocence. He's very innocent in this movie.
Yeah, he was just always looking at James Caan going, is that right? Is that right, Buck? Like,
That truth, Buck?
And then I couldn't believe, was not expecting that the movie would close with the song. Another version of the song telling you about how they all died.
with the same shots as previously, but now with an American flag superimposed to show you their...
And it's like, got a
bravery,
bullet in the head. It's like
Yeah.
it's like at the end of like American Graffiti where they put what happened to all the people, or the end of Animal House, but
Senator Bukowski.
Yeah, but sung. Michael became the Don and ran the family.
And Fredo was dead in a boat in the middle of Lake Pichituchi or whatever.
Then came Andy Garcia. Yeah.
He was conceived behind that door.
I think he's regarding Henry Harrison Ford. But that is not the most Harrison Ford you can be. Regarding Henry is not very Harrison Ford at all, as the Harrison Ford we think of when you say that and something pops in your head.
Yeah, he was laconic and moody and sort of stewing in a cool Harrison Ford vibe, but he's got to take charge to be real Harrison Ford. He's got to punch Jack Lemmon or something, right? So
I mean, look at
or tell the guys to fire.
yeah.
Here
Look how
he's
authoritative
so laid
he
back.
was. Yeah. Yeah, that was the amazing thing about the last two movies is he's so Harrison Ford in such a short amount of time. It's impressive. And in this one, you just get lines that are obviously in his voice. Although I'll give it 10 extra %. There's a shot, and I wrote down the time code, where he leans against the stagecoach.
Yeah,
And
I remember that shot.
mother scratcher can lean, right?
Yeah, everyone else is sort of fumfering for an iconic pose, and he just lays in.
Oh,
because
yeah.
he's Harrison
Ford. So I'll give him 10% Harrison Ford for that lean, or 15% Harrison Ford, but that's about it.
I might do that, but I'll give him 50%. Or I'll give him 45%, give him the extra 10 that notches him over halfway for me. Maybe it's like 55% Harrison Ford. If he had to, there's that classic story he always tells about, like, the studios had told Harrison Ford, you're not going to make it. Now you look at Tony Curtis bagging groceries, and you say to yourself, and you say, that's the movie star. And Harrison Ford said, I thought you were supposed to think he's a grocery bag.
Yeah.
So, that without having to do much and still looking kind of like a movie star, I think he's always going to get a high percentage from me, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but also, he's not way off base here. He's not being, a pharmacist. He's still a cowboy. He's still, still got a gun.
Hey, he's wearing buckskins. He's riding a horse. It's the first time we ever see him ride a horse. And it won't be the last. That's pretty Harrison Ford. And, of course, Han Solo was always the cowboy of Star Wars. So here he's a cowboy this whole movie.
You're just raising your percentage numbers the more you talk.
I am. I think I'm up near you. I'm still stick around 45% Harrison Ford, maybe 50. I'll go 50. 50% Harrison Ford.
And now let's get on to the Harrison Ford punch count. Okay, after taking a little time off, we went back and watched the opening, because it's free, of Journey to Shiloh on YouTube, and it turns out Harrison Ford did not punch anybody.
0 punches.
0.0.
He has punched Jack Lemmon more than any antagonist in this entire movie, with a lot of bar fights. This movie has a lot of bar fights, and 0 punches from Harrison Ford. Very frustrating.
Yeah, and of course, The Time to Kill, he had that big melee with the Confederates and the Union soldiers. Still didn't punch anybody there
0
either.
punches.
So the ongoing total remains at, for four movies, right? The first 4 movies?
One. And it's Jack Lemmon still.
Fine.
Obviously, you would not call this a Harrison Ford movie. That is what's fun about what we're doing here, is seeing Harrison Ford, the actual journey he took for all these roles. But in each one of these movies, you're like, oh, I can't wait to see Harrison Ford. I can't wait to see Harrison Ford in Journey to Shiloh. But then at the beginning of the last few movies, as soon as I hit play, and I'm not seeing Harrison Ford yet, of course. As soon as I hit play, each time we do this, like this time I'm like, oh, but hey, free James Caan movie. Like, I didn't even think I'm going to watch that James Caan movie. So that's been the fun thing on each one of these is like, all right, let's see what this is. Oh, hey, free Jack Lemmon movie.
Well, that reminds me of a line of dialogue from the movie. Ain't no harm in looking at a pretty girl.
Iconic.
Did they learn nothing from A Time for Killing? Anyway, that's another movie down, 50 plus to go here on the Ford Fiesta podcast. Come back 3 times a month for a new episode.
And between episodes, don't forget to follow us at The Movie Guys everywhere on social media. And you can get this show and more at Apple Podcasts and, of course, themovieguys.net. We post all of our reviews and other antings. Now, Ford was cut out of Zabriskie Point, so we're skipping that. Although, I might watch that personally.
Yeah, there might be. They claim there's a shot of him, but I mean, that doesn't make
But it's a legendary movie.
Podcast. Yeah, true.
Paul, do you want to go to the end of your life without seeing Zabriskie Point? No.
I guess it's a good point. That's a solid point.
So anyway, we're going to skip that. Maybe we'll do that for a Patreon. Getting out of Westerns, and we're getting into Getting Straight, and 1970 Elliot Gould drama. Hey, free Elliot Gould movie.
Right? Yeah, and he's in high mustache mode. Well, that's our show. Movie guys from Chicago who now live in LA are watching every movie with the guy from Ender's Game. Today was Journey to Shiloh about the Civil War, and after they watch this one, they'll watch about 50 more. In Shiloh, Ford played Willie Bill, who rode tall and hard and lean, but they couldn't have paid Ford much back then, 'cause he died off screen. This movie's like The Wild Bunch, except a slower pace. It's like that movie Glory, but without a take on race. We've done all the jokes we can do, all that we could create. So screw this movie, see you next week when we cover Getting Straight.
I understand its power now.